Hey everybody, how you doing? It's the Mature Simmer here. So I'm starting up a new set of content, and I thought I'd share something that I've been doing for a while on the channel here. And this is a multiplayer experience for Farm Simulator. I've been part of this community, the Farm Sim Network, for about 6 months at this point. So I've been involved, very active, really love it, and if people are looking for a multiplayer experience, I just wanted to kind of share and in essence do what amounts to a Let's Play type video series about running my farm here in the Farm Sim Network. So right now you can see I'm on the website, and recently they've made some changes where they've split the farm sim content from what they call the meta, which is basically things you can do on the web, and we'll get into the pieces that I utilize. There's definitely areas, massive areas of the meta that I don't get involved with. Simply because it's just not something that I have an interest in, but there's definitely a lot out there for people to explore. So my farm name here, which is something you select, is Misty Hills Agriculture, which you can see up on the top. So the nice thing about Farm Sim Network, and the thing that drew me to it and was of interest, is it's persistent servers that run in real time. And this was really unique from what I could see in the multiplayer community around Farm Simulator. Some of the problems that I've heard from others and seen with multiplayer was you either had to fire up your own server and then find your own people to join and play, or you could join someone else's server perhaps, but you never knew if it was going to be there tomorrow. What Farm Sim Network brings to the table is that consistency and knowing that the time you invest in a multiplayer experience is not going to be for naught, because they've got this massive community that's been built over the last couple years. The network just passed the 2-year anniversary a few months ago, so it's going into the 3rd year in existence. And I think at this point, it's over 10,000 people are members, and it's grown to over 150 servers. Now with FS22 coming out shortly, there are some talks of server consolidation and making things, changing the structure a little bit. So it's possible over time the server numbers are going to shake out, but it's a massive community of folks that allow you to do various things. So probably the simplest way to not continue to bore you with me just talking and you staring at a screen is to kind of I'll get into things and I'll explain what I look at, and it'll kind of teach you about FSN more through doing than walking through in tutorials. And maybe in the future, if people are interested or I feel that there's some value on a certain topic, I'll go ahead and check into that. So the first thing I usually do when I log in the morning is I just go ahead and I go to basically the My Perks page, and this is an area where you get rewarded for logging in daily. So it's kind of the end of the month here, so you can see I've got a meta box, and so what this means is this will give me a award for the web-based side of Farm Sim Network, which is what this other tab is that I have open, Entrepreneur Knots, which is the meta area that has been broken off in the last few weeks. So I'm going to go ahead and go here and open the box, and you can kind of see what happens. So I receive 5,000 meta bucks, and you can kind of see the site shows you what type of prizes are available and how likely you are to get them. So you can see, like, the last time I opened a meta box, I got 15,000, which is more of an uncommon prize. But this time I got 5,000, which falls into the common. And, as you can see, I got a lot of 2,500s in the past and so forth. So you've got web money up here. So I've got $620 in cash, but I'll show you a little bit about how that is actually not entirely accurate. So the other thing I do is I check the auction house and I look for land coming up on our server. So this is another cool thing with FSN, is to buy land as opposed to single player FSN where you just go ahead and you buy land. You have to go through an auction process. And so our server is called Hilly Seneca. So I just go in, and there you go. So you can see there's field 105 is coming up, and it's going to start tomorrow morning, a little over 24 hours from now. And sometimes there are restrictions that come on in auction. So you can see ours is local farms only. You can see on this other server, Pacific Northwest, you have to have under 2 million, what's called land nav, which is the value that you have in land you hold within FSN. And again, I'll explain a little bit of that later. And you can see what the starting bid is going to be. But what this means on our server is that only the farm managers that exist on our server can bid on this particular land. And when we jump into the server this morning, I'll explain a little bit more of who owns what and what the layout of our server is, so that you know. And then usually I'll let the other FMs on my server know, or if someone else got in earlier, they'll let people know there's something coming up for bids. So the thing that's really nice about the community is it's just a bunch of great people that enjoy Farm Simulator and playing together. So we all take care of each other from that regard, in letting each other know so that people don't miss anything. The other thing that I find valuable is the equipment auctions. So you can buy equipment directly in game if you want, but you can also buy it in auction, and you can buy it through dealerships. So I sometimes check things out just to see what's out there. At this point, because I've been playing for so long, I really have all the equipment I think I need, but I still check once in a while. And you can see there's upcoming auctions sometimes. It'll show you recently finished auctions, and you can then just bid with the money that you have here on the website. Under accounting, and this is another cool piece of FSN, is that there's kind of this world outside the actual game that exists. So you can see in my game assets, I've got almost $3 million in savings on top of the $620 in cash. So yeah, if you guys were watching and you're like, you've been playing for 6 months, you have $620, and then I have almost $4 million of vehicles that I own, and then that land nav that we saw in the auction, where there was a $2 million cap. If that came up on the land for our server, I'd still be able to bid, because right now the land I own is under 2 million. But this is what you'd be looking at, and then your total asset value, which is what the AV is for, is down here. So you can see that I've got about $8 million in asset value. And then the game also does have banking and credit scores and so forth. So I've done things in the past that have gotten my credit score up. I think when I joined, you start with like 600 as your credit score, and so you've got to do things. And that way, if you need a loan, the banks know that you have a history of repaying loans and so forth. The other piece, once in a while, I'll check, is the permit center. So something unique to FSN as well is, to do certain things, the community is monitored, and you've got to have permits. So I typically maintain a CDL license and an applicator license, and what these allow me to do is to drive semis on the server and to use a sprayer on the server. And so you can see to extend them, they're a little less expensive if you buy them outright. you'd have to pay $3,000 for a CDL license and $5,000 for an applicator license. And it's just telling me not enough funds, because right now in my cash account I don't have enough, but I could transfer money out of that $3 million in the bank to do what I needed. And then I believe, yeah, it tells you here it's valid for 15 days at a time. And so FarmSim Network runs on 12-day seasons. So an in-game year is 12 actual days, since again the servers run in real time. And our server that I'm on is set to Eastern Time, which is the time zone I'm in. So it's truly for me in real time. So whatever time it is in the real world is the same time it'll be in Misty Hills Agriculture farm on the server. And this piece up here on the website is important, because it can save you some time, especially if you've been away for 2 or 3 days and maybe you've lost track. This tells us we're in late spring in year 70 in the FSN network. So again, 12-day seasons. The community's been around for a little over 2 years, so you can kind of tell, if you go through that's how we've gotten to year 70. And I joined, as I said, about 6 months ago, which I think I became a farm manager in year 57. So I'm kind of going into my 13th, 14th year running Misty Hills Agriculture. And the other thing I'll check sometimes, if I don't know why my balance is the way it is, I'll check the finance ledger. And this basically shows all the transactions that have occurred on the server. So you can see, the last thing I did on the FarmSim network side is move $14,000 into my savings account. So yeah, let me just, quickly go into banking so you can see it. There's multiple banks, and these are run by people, so they're player banks. So there's other players who get benefits. I've not run a bank, I've not run a business, so I can't really speak to a lot of that directly. I've got another bank down here, Sargent Financial, that's really become the next one I've started to store money in. And right now, the way the structure is you get paid interest on up to $1 million in any bank, and that's why I keep these balances the way they are. So I would be able to have all this $3 million in one bank, but then I'd only be earning interest on just the first $1 million of that. And the interest at this point, again, this is something that was adjusted recently, is not huge. It used to be significantly more. And just to align and tweak gameplay, the creator made a decision that the interest rates would go down, and that probably happened a couple months ago at this point. So you're not going to make a lot of money just storing cash on the server, but my intent and what I enjoy really about Farming Simulator Network is just the aspect of playing the game. And so I'm less worried about watching my funds grow, because as long as I have enough to keep the farm going, I'm pretty happy. So let me pop over here to the other site, Entrepreneur Knots, which is the name for more of the website. So you can see here, I've got $522,000 in what's called meta funds. And so this is where I was looking at the funds transfer. So at this point, it's telling me I can move 45 cents in the 12-day window. So that means I've moved money within the last 12 days, because you can move more than 45 cents. The value is based upon how much land you have. I think I can move over 200,000 in a 12-day window. And since I don't do a lot of things in the meta, I tend to not keep money in here. So, but the other thing I do, again, every morning is I go in, I do have 2 trucks in meta logistics. So I'm going to go ahead here and go into the logistics side. And you can see I've got 2 trucks with 2 drivers. And this is, again, a cool aspect of the FSN community, is there's other things to do outside of just play Farm Simulator. So it adds a sense of a larger world and more complexity than just playing a multiplayer farm sim. network piece on just a general server that isn't within the network. So these things are tied together, and you can do things in the meta that are related to your gameplay as well. And as I said, we'll kind of have that come up. Well, that's interesting because we were at 522 and now we're at 527. So this is a good example. I'll go in here and look at my ledger, look at meta account. Okay. So I had the screen up, but I opened that meta box for 5,000, and then so you can see the winnings are here. And you can see, there's other things going on. So there's some sell orders of sunflowers and soy from Azerbaijan, and so and then one of my trucks had a blowout. We had to replace a tire. There's a daily labor expense for the drivers, for the truck drivers, for example. So there's $340 a day that gets pulled out in daily expenses. So there's the one from the day before, so forth. And again, I'll explain some of these as we go through, but I'll cover this crop information because it's relevant as well. So the other thing that exists in FSN is this resource exchange, which basically is a global market that you can send crops to. So one of the things that's really cool in FSN is, versus just having the typical option that you do in Farming Simulator of selling your crops to sell points on the map, being part of FSN gives you additional options. You're able to do what's called a direct sale, and we'll be looking at that. Actually, that's something else I need to check this morning, so let me go pop over back to the Farm Sim site, and if I go to my business, this is how I manage Misty Hills Agriculture, and you can see there's various things you can track. Some of these are just for fun, like field work's not really actively used anymore. And then you do track all your equipment. So I'll go over my equipment in the game, but you can see that here it's also tracked. And some of that is because, again, equipment's coming in from the website as well, if I'm buying on auction or I'm buying from a dealership. So, but crop sales is one thing you can do. So my server is server 48. Again, its name is Hilly Seneca. And you can do what's called direct sell or send to warehouse. And so I've got some bales that are sitting around, and I keep checking the price of the bales every day. I'm hoping to have the bales get above $200 per bale. So we're really close. I've been monitoring it for a while. It may not get there, so I may just have to be happy with this price, which certainly, it's close enough that I would be. But as you can see, with $3 million, I'm not exactly having this huge need to sell things because I'm not in immediate need of money. So I'm willing to wait. But this is a nice feature, so I can sell in game still at sell points, but I can also do a direct sell. And what would happen here is then this would create a contract, which it kind of tells you here. It gives you the detail. A contractor's going to come in and verify the amount, and then we basically sell the bale stores that we have in our server. And when I go ahead and do that at some point, you'll see how that all works. And the other piece is then send to the warehouse, which is what gets things into the resource exchange. And again, I'll explain a little bit more, but this gives you some base information. So if I go to Trade Monitor here, this is showing me Baku, Azerbaijan, and every server has a physical warehouse location in the FSN world tied to it. So ours happens to be Baku, so if I send a warehouse, that's where it goes, and that means I need to have a warehouse in Baku. And that's just really as simple as kind of going into warehouse and buying one in the city you want. I've got warehouses mainly in the U.S. because that's where my trucking network is. so I can do things there. But I've got a small amount that's running for another few weeks here, and those will likely sell, but if they don't, they just pop back into my warehouse, and you can see the price I'm selling them at, which I think in game I was able to sell soy when I sent this to the warehouse for maybe $800 a thousand. So you can see I got a much better deal by doing this, but the difference is this order that I placed here is a 30-day order, so it could take me up to 30 days to get my money, where if I sold in game, I'd immediately have the funds and I'd have them in game. And otherwise getting money from the web in game, most things in FSN take 24 to 72 hours. So if I win an auction, if I win land or equipment, if I buy things from a dealership, if I need to transfer money in, those things take some time. So anyway, enough of the website. Those are the things I check every morning. So and the logistics is, again, I want to keep my trucks running. They get points as they move along for every mile they drive, and so it looks like later today I've got one truck coming in. So I'll likely pop in here and show that later, and you can see what it looks like to pick up a load and send a truck on its way. And go from there. So let's pop into the farm. So here we are, Misty Hills Agriculture. Welcome. So this is my house, and some of my equipment, some of the things I have stored here. And again, it's early this morning. So as I said, the server's aligned with Eastern Time, so right around 6:45. It's not exact. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Hit my mouse wheel. Sorry about that. So let me pull up my garage and kind of show you the equipment I have. We'll certainly walk around the yard and see, but some of the other nice things with FSN is they do have items that they'll pull in, and they may mod them for function within FSN. And so I think these trailers are one of them, where they'll hold certain things. So you may find items that have capabilities or have things removed, and this again is for fairness and consistency within the FSN world. So there isn't any advantage of being on a specific server where you can't grow certain crops. They've done a really great job with all the different maps of making sure every crop's available on every map, and that you can't be on one server and get an advantage over everybody else in the FSN community because of either how the equipment works on it or so forth. So there will be things, if you play with a lot of mods in single player, that's one of the things that I definitely needed to get used to, is FSN is very much based on realism. And so there's not a lot of aids that are allowed to be used. You can't use things like auto drive or course play within FSN. You've got to do all the work yourself. Going through the equipment tour, so I've got a tanker, which I'm using for herbicide, and you can't really tell here because this just shows the general piece, but when you buy them and customize them, you're able to put tags on them, and it's not that then that's all I can carry, but in theory, a lot of people, if you're doing more of a role play type thing, maybe you'll have a tanker if you have cows for dairy for the milk, and then something for herbicide, because obviously in the real world you're not going to want to be putting milk into something that you have chemicals in, even if you're flushing the tank and doing a tank wash. There's just that danger, and so most farms would just simply have different equipment, and so you're able to do that, obviously, but there's a cost. So I've got a couple tractors, and I've kind of gotten them up to the largest horsepower. So this one's almost 700. This one's a little smaller. You'll see I've got thin tires on it, so I use it to kind of fertilize and weed the fields when the crop is in, because crop destruction is on in FSN. So you obviously don't want to kill your crops while you're trying to help them out and increase your yield. So, and then I've got a Mac. This one is, again, I believe one that's modded for FSN for speed and so forth, and sometimes pricing. And I've also got a case harvester. I'm not specifically a case fan in real life, but the equipment tends to do things that I like. One of the main things is I can angle the pipe as I'm driving, and so I've come to like that. I've also got a root crop harvester, and you can see there's a lot of crops available on our server and all FSN servers, so not just potato and sugar beet that I believe are in the core farm simulator game, but we've got carrots, onions, lettuce, cabbage, red cabbage as well, and then cotton, hemp, and tobacco. So I'm real excited this year because I'm actually finally going to be able to do these crops, because I just haven't had the land, mainly a place to put the storage sheds easily. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then I've got a couple trailers to transport things. I've got an auger trailer that lets me move around, mainly seeds, fertilizer, and lime, so that as I don't work near a field where my supply silos are, I can quickly refill and not have to drive across the map to refill. My pull behind header, which I love because I don't need a trailer, and anything for corn and hops and sunflowers. Picked that up a few years ago. My header for my root crop, and then trailer to collect the bales for cotton and tobacco and hemp. I've got a larger plow to plow fields when needed. This is my cedar planter, which also doesn't require me to cultivate the fields ahead of time. And then, and obviously there's just a certain amount of crops it grows. As if you've played Farm Simulator, you understand that. And then this planter does a lot of other crops that the horse will not do. And then this is my herbicide sprayer. I don't liquid fert at this point. I found that's more expensive than solid fertilization, and I don't have animals, so I don't do anything like slurry or digestate. Just a lot of work, and I just, given the amount of time I have to play, I don't do that. And then this is my fertilizer spreader, which does both lime and fertilizer, so we'll see that likely used shortly in the next few days as after I harvest and plant. And then I got a baler, square baler, baler pickup, and then the chainsaw I turned on by accident. And then I have a chipper and a stump grinder and a log winch for when we do some logging. And this is probably as good a time as any to talk about it. So on FSN servers, there are logging servers. If you love logging, there are a few servers that are built to do logging year-round. But on any other FSN server that isn't a logging server, you are only allowed to cut down trees in the wintertime, in seasons. So what you'll find on maps like ours is if you've got to clear out any trees, you've kind of got to plan that for winter. And so a few years ago, when I picked up fields 97 and 98, there was a corner that was pretty heavily wooded, and I just wanted to clear that out and expand my field a bit, because I just didn't need the trees there. And I'm like, hey, if I can get more arable land, that'll be great. And so that's when I invested in this equipment to go ahead and do that. And I determined at that point, for a while I was hauling logs and just selling them, and I determined the wood chips were basically about the same price as the logs, and it was just simpler to chip the trees on my property and then drag them over. And then I've got the Scout for Precision Farming. Precision Farming actually just got added into FSN in the last probably in the last month. So within the FSN world, we're all getting used to that. But and then the lizard scanner from Seasons, and I've got then root crop storage, a bunch of silos to get space up, the shed that you were just looking at, and I've got some stations. I've got silo displays. Here's some of the storages, and again, you'll see how they work. They work a little differently in FSN because again, you're selling these to eliminate bales and so forth when you're doing a direct sell. So they come and go off your property. So I pop these in the tobacco and cotton because that's what I'm planning on growing this year in that area. And then I've still got those square bales that I've actually been holding on to for about 2 or 3 in-game years, waiting for the price to go through, and then pressure washer, a fuel station, workshop, and then I'm a sponsor on the server, which basically means I do a monthly donation to keep the server running, and that allows me to have an actual farmhouse. So not everybody in FSN will have that. And that allows us to keep the server synced up in time and so forth. So anyway, good news is while we were in there, sun got a little higher, so we've got a little bit more daylight. And since it's now late spring, as we said in year 70, the days are going to get a little bit longer. So next few days, we'll see more things. So here's one of my fields. I'm growing canola, as you can see. And again, with precision farming, we're getting the detail of, I'm standing on loamy sand, and because I got my fields ready, I've got my lime and my fert appropriately set so that my yield should be great. That's my hope. So this is the first season with crops, first year with crops with precision farming. So again, you can see a good portion of the equipment that I just talked about is here. So let me pop out to the map real quick. Whoops. And so here is the Seneca map. So again, we just call this server Hilly Seneca, mainly because if you've ever played on this map, you'll know it's not flat like a lot of FS maps are. One of the reasons I chose this map was for that. I just like the difference. So if I go in here, here's me, Misty Hills Agriculture, and again, I've just got the symbol in front of me because I'm a sponsor of the server. And then you'll have a contractor farm and an FSN team farm on every server, which allow you to do various things that, again, I'll explain as things go along. So people can be contractors on the map and can own a little bit of land within FSN rules. And we've got one of those, as you'll see. So you'll see some land owned by Pink. So there is a contractor who's present on our server that has had to kind of take a break because of some real life stuff, and decided to not step back from being a farm manager on a different server. And again, that's the wonderful part of FSN. Like, as life throws things at you, you can adjust accordingly and scale down, become more active later. And so that's kind of the plan right now. And so it gives you that ability to still stay involved and game in the multiplayer world, but not have all the responsibility. So then we've got, a green farm, a red farm, and then light blue and a dark blue farm. And so you're able to have up to 6 FMs or farm managers on a server. So we've got 5 at this point, the 4 plus myself. So we have room for one more. And so at some point we may have somebody join us. But then going back, so I'm the orange farm. So you can see we're here at 30 and 29. That's my what's called my home plot, within FSN. When you join as a farm manager, you're able to pick a home plot of any of the fields that are FSN owned, which are all these purple fields. So again, we have one farm manager slot open, so if anybody were to join, they could select within limits one of these purple fields as their home plot. And once again, just like any FSN or FS map, some plots come with multiple fields. So, you can't just buy field 25 as your home plot like you'd get this, which is the same reason I got 30 and 29. So let me pop back here. So I own 30 and 29. I then picked up 89 a couple years in to my Farm Sim Network farm manager career, and then I picked up this group. 9798 is again a multi-field parcel, and just for personal reasons, this was one of the ones that I really loved. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the Seneca Map, the Seneca Map is set in a real area in Ohio, and I happen to live around that area of the country. And so another reason I was like, oh, this is a great map. It's hilly, it's not flat, and it's, nearby. So win-win. And so there's about 3 or 4 spots on the map that have properties with Ohio state flags on them, and this happened to be one of them. And it was owned by someone when I joined the server, and that person chose to leave eventually, and when they did, I purchased that plot from them, honestly, strictly because I could get an Ohio state flag on property I owned. So shallow, yes, but made me happy, and that's part of what the experience in FSN is about. So I own that, and actually that has turned into, we'll pop up here, that's kind of turned into my main storage area, because one of the things, as you could see, I didn't have a lot of yard space without eating into the fields. Sorry, I keep hitting the mouse wheel because I want to zoom in and out, but I'm not in a vehicle, so I can't zoom in and out. So this is probably easier to see in the future when I and when I go ahead and show up in a vehicle. But you can see I've got basically storage for everything. And one of the things that did occur is, like, recently they tweaked how weeds worked a little bit in the world, and weeds became more prevalent. And I think it was just because the Seasons mod had some changes in it, and they just applied the updated version to all the FSN servers, and suddenly weeds became a problem. And so prior to that, I hadn't been doing herbicide, and suddenly I needed to, or I'd be affecting crop yield. And so, I use these little silo displays so I can see, without having to go into the menu, what I've got. And same thing in our main storage. At this point, I've got nothing left. I have cleared things out recently. So yeah, and this property happened to have a house, which again is just a placeable within this. It doesn't have sleep triggers. Only the server sponsors are allowed to do that within FSN. And there's my Ohio state flag. So the reason that this land was of interest is that. And then, yeah, I keep a couple of my larger pieces of equipment up here, along with, I think I've got a trailer. Yeah, I've got my seed auger. And again, because I'm the orange farm, I just said, hey, what I can, I make orange, if it makes sense, although I tend to leave the main equipment alone. But trailers, you'll see on my farm, is orange. And then, we've got a neighbor across the way. He's got, one of his things in the field. You can see some of his silos and so forth. So yeah. And so just in the last season, just last autumn, I picked up this parcel, which includes 85, 86, and a good portion of the the forest here, as you can see when I go here, and you can see the orange holdings. And so part of why I got that is, again, I didn't have a place to put any bale stores for cotton or hemp on any of my property. So one of the other limitations that they have within FSN is you can't really do any kind of massive terraforming on the system. So that may be new to folks who are used to, in single player, just kind of warping the world and doing whatever you want. But because of server performance and so forth, there's things in the rules that are frowned upon, because obviously if servers are crashing, they're having to work on getting them up, and if it's something that can be preventable, they put rules around that to avoid that. So terraforming something that I guess impacts server performance, and also bales and straw and so forth, are things that you need to get into storage pretty quickly, because they affect server performance as well. So there's a lot of planning. That's part of what I like about FSN as well, is there's just a lot of planning that goes into running your farm, which is what this adds for me to the Farm Simulator 19 experience, is the fact that I've got to actually think a bit more like a real world farmer. Like, what am I going to do? What am I targeting for next year? It creates that persistence that I can do to some degree in single player, but of course then I'm doing it by myself. And it adds, those trappings around it of extra world expansion, like the additional sell points and so forth beyond just in game. So it just adds a lot of cool features that make it a different experience in playing Farming Simulator, which is part of why I decided I'm going to go ahead and share some of this on YouTube, on my channel, in the hopes that it'll help others understand, other options they have. So if we go back into the map, you can see again the other farms. Here we've got, and I know the farm managers' names in the game. So, but yeah, Turtle Creek Farms. So the person that runs that, their name is Fire, like mine is Caracairn 2, within the game. And then they've got several fields spread out throughout the map. Sears Farms up here, which is the lighter blue. And then we've got I think it's Wild Moose Farms here right now. They've just got these couple plots. And I think, again, this is part of what is introduced into FSN. He decided to buy this land when it came up for auction, because it was at least on the main road, or one of the main roads, even though it was a little ways away. And there's a little bit of discussion that's been going on where it's a ways away, and sometimes it determines what crops he plants and so forth. And again, he may decide it's just not worth the effort, and so he may sell it back and then go forward. So I did mention there's a contractor on our map, so they own this parcel up here, which they'll farm. Again, there's limitations where you can see, like the FMs here, most of us have multiple parcels. I in my case at this point have 4, and I may not do anything else. I mean, honestly, the only thing I'm really looking at is 88 and 87, which were initially what I was thinking I would do, is that my entire farm would be basically these 5 fields. Again, the Ohio State flag came up and kind of put a monkey wrench in those plans. And then when this came up, I initially wasn't going to bid on it, but then I decided to, because of the forest area, where here, if I was going to put some storage, I would have to break into fields, which was my other problem in the other area. So, and because, I'm sorry, because we couldn't terraform, I was starting to talk about that earlier. You're limited, because this is a hilly map, of where you can put bale stores. You're looking for some flat land, and so there happens to be something that was relatively flat at the edge of the woods here that I cleared out this winter. Took out some trees, and I was able to fit 2 stores in there, and just made the decision at that point that I'm going to target cotton and tobacco, because they basically have, all 3 of the crops that I can pick with that cotton harvester have similar ground temps and so forth. So I went ahead and placed those 2, and that's what I'm going to grow this year. And then when I sell those out, maybe I'll try hemp a different year just to see what that's like. Because again, within FSN, I'm always trying to figure out which crops are profitable, and where I can make the most money for my time. And then, one of the last holdings then is the green farm here, which I think is Green Corp. Yeah, Great Green Corp. And then, whoops. And then, he's got several fields around, and he's got a dairy operation that he started here. You can see there's chickens going in for that farmer. So it's always fun just seeing, what people decide to do, what they're interested in. When we get out and about during the day, you'll see that over here they've got a field of poplar planted right across the street from me. So he's going to be doing some, tree harvesting and so forth. So the other thing of note, I'm going to go ahead and just go to the regular map here, is if you've played on this map in single player, you might notice differences. Well, you certainly will notice some, and one of the main ones is this custom silo. So within FSN, there's customs, and so this is the point where you move things off the map. So if I do the direct sell or send to warehouse that we talked about earlier on, the way I get crops from the game to that is by placing them in the custom silo, and then there's a contract where people will move those off the map. And so again, at some point, if it makes sense, I'll explain that, and we'll go from there. And so sometimes some of the decision, depending on, again, what you're choosing to farm, because in my case, I'm arable land. At this point this year, I've got canola on every one of my fields except these, because obviously, again, I purchased these. I think I took possession of them like in autumn 3. So it was literally at the end of the season. There was nothing I could do with those fields other than start to plan for what I was going to do with them, this coming year. And so I've got canola on the other 5 fields. And so in most cases, I'm either direct selling, which I have options here. With St. Stephen's does a lot of the purchasing, for a lot of things, as you can see. They're the last one on the list here. And there's a lot of things I could sell there. But otherwise, if I want to send them out of the game, I need to take them to the custom silo. So part of my decision when I became a farm manager on this server was looking what was available and who was on here. And it was a different group of farm managers at that time, which again is always a fun thing that I found with FSN, is even though I've only been playing for 6 months, there's no farm manager left on this map at this point that was on this server when I joined. Part of that was there were a couple inactive people when I joined, and again, FSN has rules around that, where you have to be active within every 3 game years, at least somewhat, which in real life basically is 36 days or so. So basically once a month you need to be doing something on your farm, which most people are a lot more active than that. But if something comes up, it's not like people feel, that there's this pressure that I must do something constantly. Real life can happen, and if suddenly for 2 weeks you're unable to play, while you're going to have in-game consequences because the servers are operating. So if you planted crops and suddenly you can't harvest them, they'll wither and die. You'll lose that investment in the crop, and you'll have to have to work through that. But so we had a couple of those, and eventually those got moved off the server. And then the other couple farm managers that were present, again, had real life issues that made them decide that they were actually stepping away from actively being farm managers in FSN. And at this point, I believe they've actually come back, but they decided to go on to another server. And again, I don't necessarily know the reasons they didn't come back here. It could have simply been because the two of them like to play together, and we didn't have 2 farm slots open at that time. Or they may have simply said, hey, I want to try a different map now that I'm starting up again. I had enough on Seneca. I want to do something else. And that's, again, one of the great things. There's just a lot of great things with FSN, but one of them is certainly there's a lot of maps across those 150 plus servers, and you're able to move your farm if you want from time to time as well. And again, just as in real life, there's rules for doing that. There's potential costs for doing that. There's definitely time for doing that. So in a lot of cases, what I've seen, I think you may lose a whole game year in moving between, liquidating your assets where you're at and then, getting set up on the new server and so forth. So, those are decisions just as in real life you'd have to make if you suddenly decided, I'm going to move from Nebraska to Wyoming because I want to farm somewhere else and live somewhere else. Well, that doesn't happen with the snap of a finger. There's logistics and time that occurs to do that. So, yeah, we saw that auction of 105 is the piece of land that's coming up for sale here. So it's right next to this farmer, but just like my decision of do I expand further, because it's real time and you've got to stay on top of things. At some point, the amount of time you can give to FSN dictates how many fields you own. So there's a lot of decisions that go on, and I think that really covers a lot of what I wanted to just give you guys a tour of today. Let me just hop back over to the field. Got to zoom in a bit, see if I can pick one of the tractors. So I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm going to hop into the other one here because it's faster. And, we'll move around a little bit here. So let me pop out a bit. So you can see, as I said, I've got, canola on the fields here. And the fields across the street, as you can tell, certainly something, why I was interested, because as I said, on 30 and 29 I didn't really have a yard. This has some space over here, so I was initially looking when I was scouting, saying, oh, that would be great. But as in real life, what became available changed my plans a little bit. So at this point, I have less need for that plot for the yard space because I picked up 97 and 98 because it had an Ohio State flag, and it also had yard space because it was the home plot of a different farm manager at one point, and he had cleared out space. So I actually don't know if he carved into fields, but these are the 2 fields I just bought, as you can see on the mini map. And so around the corner here is where I placed the bale stores. And again, on the hilly map, flat space is at a premium, but this was about as close as I could find. And so this is where I've got my 2 bale stores waiting for what we'll be working on this year. So 1 tobacco and 1 cotton, and you learn new things all the time, including the fact that I did not realize, maybe it's just an optical illusion, but it looks like one bale store is bigger than the other. So I think the cotton bale store is larger than the tobacco store, but It again may be an optical illusion, but it looks different to me. It may not look, you can comment and let me know if you feel it looks different too. So I'm going to go ahead and drive off to the north end here in a little bit and just show you my bale stores, and that'll give you enough of a view here. Whoops. So yeah, part of the FSN rules too are, there's an expectation that you're, aside from the fact that there is crop destruction on, while with my tractor, if I drove in my field or a field, it wouldn't really affect the crops. There's an expectation because of the realism aspect that you're not just cutting across fields, you're taking roads and you're driving appropriately. And they can monitor that. There's people that monitor for behavior, and you can get fined and you can get tickets for doing things. So this is where I have my bale storage. So you can see I've got some straw bales here sitting around waiting for sale. Haven't thrown the cover up. And again, just trying to get flat land, it's just hard. So this was as close as I had before, and as you can see, lots of trees, and unless I wanted to cut into the field, placing those bale stores that I placed over by 85 and 86, I just didn't have room. And so while I really wanted to try the other crops, I decided I just had to wait until I had land available to do it, which again, it was really cool. Because I love realistic simulations, and the FSN experience just gives me that option of I had to make real choices, like I've got to wait until I have land conducive to do that. And you can see I've got a couple spots here where I had bale stores in the past, and that one bale laying on the ground there is a corn stalk bale that was in my baler last year. I've got to deal with that at some point, but since it's just one bale, I'm hoping it doesn't have a whole lot of performance issues, and we haven't seen any hiccups on the server, so I think we're okay. Looks like I've got a dead spot in my crop there. Once again, this is what I love about this map, is just the views, and especially this time of day. I tend to play a lot in early morning. That's most of my time, especially during the week. I'll usually get on in the morning for a couple hours, so as you join me on this journey, you're going to see a lot of that, which unfortunately will mean sometimes we'll be working in the dark just because of the time of the server, and as we get into autumn and late autumn and we're doing harvest, sometimes it happens at night, and the other times, as I am working, I work during the day, and I'll have things at night as well. And so, this area that I'm driving on right now is actually not part of my land. So even though it's flat, I can't, I wasn't able to use it to place bale stores because it won't let me do that. So that gives you a good idea of the map tour. And for the first 2-3 years, these were my two fields. Everything about Misty Hills Agriculture lived and died in this space. So I've had many a morning here farming away, watching the sun come up, and you can tell, if you can't tell, I really enjoyed my time. I enjoy my time here. Wow, I've got another dead spot in the field. Yeah, I really haven't looked this year, because this field was planted, or these fields were planted before winter last year. So I've just popped in the server each day to kind of make sure time was set appropriately, since as the server sponsor, that's my responsibility to kind of keep the server synced up. So I try to keep it, when it gets off an hour or so, I'll move it. Like I did this morning, honestly, when I signed in, it was off by almost 2 hours, so we got things lined up so that it was where it needed to be, and also knowing that I was going to be starting up this series, didn't want it to be finally 5:30 in the morning on the server now, and we'd still be in the dark the whole time. So this way, at least you got a good view of the map, or at least a piece of the map in daytime, and we'll go from there. So hope you enjoyed this. I know it was a lot of listening to me talk, but just trying to get you familiar with the lay of the land and what I deal with here on FSN, and the things I need to think about was really the goal here. I'll shut the tractor off so that you don't have to keep listening to me over that, and we'll catch up with you probably later today, because my hope is that I will be able to plant those fields with cotton and tobacco, because I need the ground temp to get up to 61. So we're looking to do that. You can see the seasons menu here. Right now I can plant anything within our geo except the couple things I need, but I'm hopeful, because it's supposed to get into the 70s later today. I'm hopeful the ground gets warm enough. Otherwise, it may be tomorrow, and that'll be a little bit more of a challenge. So, I just realized I don't think I have, I have not sampled my fields. I need to do that. So, I'm actually going to go ahead and do that. And I may break that into a separate video, but yeah, let's do that.